Hello and a warm welcome to Federal special program Capital Beat. During his trip to Chhattisgarh in the Durg area, Prime Minister Narendra Modi made a big announcement that he will be extending the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Ann Yojana for the next 5 years. Now, what does this scheme do? It started during the COVID times, that is in 2020, where poor people were given free ration 5 kgs to every household and almost about 80 crore households during the COVID times. Now, that scheme has been extended by about 5 years. That's what Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in the middle of the elections, has announced. Now, is this extension an admission by the Narendra Modi government about the prevailing hunger and poverty in the country? What could be the political, social, and the economic fallout of this extension meted out to the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Ann Yojana? Joining me now is a very veteran panel. Joining me now is Santosh Mehrotra, one of the most renowned economists of the country. Thank you, sir, so much for joining. We have Sunil Bhargav, who is the BJP spokesperson. Thank you so much for joining, Sunil, sir. We have TK Rajlakshmi, who is the deputy editor of the Frontline. Thank you, Rajlakshmi, so much for joining. And let me begin today's discussion. And I hope also to be joined by Pushparaj Deshpande, who is the director of the Samrit Bharat Foundation. I think he'll be joining a little late, but let me begin with Professor Santosh Mehrotra. Professor Mehrotra, how would you see this extension which has been given to the free ration scheme? Does it mean that the economic policies of the Modi government have miserably failed? There is hunger, there is poverty, and this extension means an admission of this kind of a situation in the country. Yes, sir.
Well, obviously, the government would like to see it as a vote catcher. That's the objective. We know this. It's been announced just 2 weeks before the first polls are about to take place in the 5 states where we know, all of us know perfectly well, that in most of them the BJP is unlikely to be performing brilliantly. Secondly, of course, it is an attempt to announce already the first political plank in the run-up to the Lok Sabha elections, which are still a good 6 months or 8 months away. Now, we all know that 80 crore people were given under the 2013 National Food Security Act rations at extremely low prices of 1 rupee a kilo as well as to 3 rupees a kilo, I think. And all that just happened is that during COVID, for a period, it was extended to by 5 kilograms. And then, in addition, it was then made free. After that, 5 kilograms was withdrawn recently. Now, quite clearly, there's been some fiscal impact. It's not going to be a huge fiscal impact. But I think what worries me about this scheme is the following, that unfortunately for the last many years, and I've followed this extremely carefully because I'm a public finance economist as well. I study the budget extremely carefully. I teach economics. We've seen that systematically health expenditures have dropped, expenditures allocated to midday meals have dropped, that Anganwadi, ICDS centers allocations have dropped. Education expenditure in the country, while the new education policy recommends that 6% of GDP should be allocated in the country, only 2.9% is actually allocated, when till at least 9 years ago, the allocation of central and states taken together was at least 4% of GDP rather than the persistently low 2.9% of GDP. And let's just also recall this government came out very, very good announcement, 2017, of a national health policy, and it committed that it will increase health expenditure in the country. Public health expenditure to GDP would go up from 1.1% to 2.5% by 2024-25. Have we made any progress towards that? No, despite the fact that we've had a pandemic in the intervening period. Public health expenditure total in the country is still only 1.3% of GDP, and 24-25 financial year is literally 1 year away. So despite the fact that we've had pandemic intervening, so what is the meaning of all that I'm trying to say? That the government has seen that unemployment has risen, it's not being able to generate growth and therefore non-farm jobs, just as young people have gotten educated, because the government would not have to give these benefits, these subsidies, if people had jobs and they didn't need these benefits. So on the one hand, jobs are not growing. On the other hand, public health expenditure, public education expenditure is not growing. If anything, it has shrunk. And yet these expenditures are happening. Maybe the government is realizing that the global hunger index, worsening of India's ranking in the world from around 100 or 102 to 111 in of about 130, 140 countries is a matter to be taken seriously. But be that as it may, there is just no question about it that this is an admission of rather all-round failure rather than anything else.
Right.
Gee,
So very precisely mentioned that this is an overall failure of the policies of the Modi government. So, Professor Mehrotra, I'll come to you later about the additional spending which the government will incur. And I have a few figures which I would want to understand from you. But let me go to Rajlakshmi and understand the political fallout of it. Rajlakshmi, given the fact we recently heard Smriti Irani giving a ludicrous statement, about the global hunger index, the figures when they came out, and the way she dismissed the report completely. Now, Prime Minister making the announcement for the extension of this free ration scheme in the middle of Chhattisgarh election. How would you see it politically? Is it really going to benefit? Will it really benefit the BJP per se, of course, in the poll-bound states, and also with an eye to Lok Sabha elections? Yes.
See, it's a fact that that there is a crisis. There is a crisis. There's a crisis of hunger. There's a crisis of nutrition. There's a crisis of access as such. You see, so to sort of address this vacuum of crisis, this vacuum, the government makes this grandiose announcement that it's going to give 80 crore people 5 kg of subsidized food grain. But again, one must note that it's all cereal based. Okay, it's all cereal based. It's not what we would call a holistic package of nutritious goods. So which is what the global hunger index, which in fact Professor Mehrotra also referred to, had said it said very clearly that India had slipped in its rankings, and it was because the prevalence of undernutrition had gone up. Now the POU is an indicator which is applied uniformly to all countries. It's not just applicable to India. But it's very strange that it is only the Indian government that seems to object to it every year, and finds faults with its methodology, saying that the sample is small, or that the questions are not proper, or that it doesn't adequately it's not representative of hunger at all, and in fact there was also talk, as you would remember, that the Economic Advisory Council there were some papers that were published by the Economic Advisory Council, or rather for the Economic Advisory Council, where it was suggested that we should have our own yardsticks, of growth, for children. Okay, now which is absolutely silly, because there are certain standardized growth measurements, etc., for children, which are been established by the WHO. and it's not something again, unique to India that can be applicable, right? So there's been this denial, at the one end, okay, that India is not hungry, that India is well fed, there's no crisis, absolutely. So then it just then it in fact calls out the bluff of the government. On the other hand, you're going on, extending um this allocation, right? I mean, it's not an extended allocation, it's basically the NFSA, as Professor Mehrotra also said, that basically the NFSA has got a new name essentially. And the NFSA came when the UPA was in fact was in government. So clearly this is a ploy to, I think, hoodwink people into believing that we are giving you more. But at the same time, if you look at food inflation itself, retail inflation, it's absolutely high. No, I'm not an expert to go into the figures, but I know that onion prices were, and all of us ate onions in the last 2-3 weeks, and before that, tomato prices, right? So it's not that things are really hunky dory as far as other food items are concerned. And besides, nobody survives just on cereal consumption, right? I mean, your nutrition is a composite package, and the elements that comprise that composite package, the bulk of it is out of the reach of the Aam Aadmi. Absolutely, when you're talking about eggs, whether you're
Rajlakshmi, there is a political question to this whole scheme, and there is a food crisis. There is a problem, whatever the government can give. So this kind of an announcement, of course, everybody can see the motive. It's an electoral motive to win the hearts of the people so that people vote for BJP. All that is very clear. But should this extension of the scheme be criticized, or should Modi government's back should be patted for this kind of a decision?
in the sense, obviously, no party is going to criticize it, because it's something that is needed for the people of this country. Not just this. I mean, it's not an announcement that just needs to be made at the time of elections. And besides, I mean, I'm not so sure whether it does not sort of violate the code of conduct. I mean, I do not know, because it's a continuous scheme, and to make it electoral announcement, there have to be certain I think norms regarding.
In fact, this has been mentioned by a few other people also, that this looks like a blatant violation of the model code of conduct.
Okay. So yes, so I don't see any political party really sort of opposing it, but clearly I think they can raise issues about the fact that that is made and tom-tommed about as if it's a huge favor that the government is doing to its people. I mean, it's sad, actually. At one level, it's really sad that such things should be made into into a political issue. I mean, in the form of what should I say? Charity. I mean, is that the word? I mean, I think charity sounds more better. I think that we are being sort of charitable towards you, by giving you this grain. It's. I mean, it's your right. I mean, you're sitting in government. You're obliged to feed your people. You can't say that हम आप पे एहसान कर रहे हैं. It can't be that. And that, and then हम आपको दे रहे हैं, इसीलिए आप हमको वोट दीजिए. And so it's ridiculous that way.
Right. No, that's an interesting take you have given, and later on I'll also take a response from Professor Mehrotra on this. But Sunil Bhargav, I'll come to you. And the first question, of course, is what Professor Mehrotra said, that this looks like an admission of the overall failure of the economic policy by the Modi government. And the second point also, which was a very significant one, which Rajlakshmi mentioned, that Prime Minister Modi apparently is making the public feel that, look, this is what I'm giving, and in lieu of that, now you need to vote for the BJP government. I would really want a response from you on both these fronts. Yes.
See, I'll carry forward from where Mrs. Rajlakshmi left. She said that there is nothing wrong in this scheme. And I totally agree with this. The scheme has to be welcomed. And the fact of the matter is, no opposition party is opposing it. Now, I see nothing wrong in helping the poor, deprived, backward, oppressed, and the OBCs towards moving for a better nutrition, better health, and for a better way of life. We all know that there are problems. The Modi government is addressing the issues very surely, very confidently, and with an inclusive growth. So I think that's one part of it, which is a social part of what the scheme is aimed at. Now, coming to the economic part, now 5 kgs of cereals and 1 kg of pulse would be about 1,000 rupees per family. Okay. Now, I don't think when the revenues of the country are soaring in 2014, when it used to be about 12 lakh crores, it is now touching about 37, 38 lakh crores. And you see the GST collection last month was 1.72 lakh crores. Now it's moving towards almost about 2 lakh crores a month. Now, if the government revenues are increasing because of the compliances, because of the better discipline in the national trade, I think the welfare schemes, which are permanent in nature, will definitely come forward. Because the growth has a system of and it takes time to give that escalating effect on the real people. It grows. There is an effect which is like takes time. Right.
No,
so during that
I wanted to
time,
interrupt you for a few seconds because you made a mention of the fact that because of the fiscal discipline, the country is generating revenue. But I was just reading it just a few hours back. This figure has come that the center will incur an additional 15,000 crore annually because of the announcement which Prime Minister Narendra Modi has made, which is about additional cost of 1 lakh crore, 1 lakh crore every year. Now, where are you going to get this money from? Like what Professor Mehrotra said, that of course there has been a budget cut in the education, in the health.
I'm coming to that. I'm coming to that.
Yes.
I'm coming to that. Now, you see, the health insurance for all up to 5 lakhs. This is one major step that the government has taken to ensure that you have health for all. Now, this insurance definitely looks at providing these people with a proper health support. Now, number of medical colleges, number of hospitals, that is increasing. And with the speed it is increasing. Now, the infrastructure has to be built. If certain things are desired or are desirable in the country, which I don't want to say that the previous government didn't do, but the speed at which it was required to be done was lacking. So now the speed and scale, both are there, and therefore the medical facilities will increase, the education will increase, the skill development will increase. So while the country is being skilled to move with an inclusive growth at a speed that is a desirable speed, I think during that gap, such welfare schemes of permanent nature, which give the support of nutrition and food. So ultimately, we have to move towards a total food security. Simply by pronouncing that we are coming for a total food security, if you take small steps and come to a final food security system, that's where we are moving at. I think.
I'll take a response from Professor Mehrotra on this, but I would like to ask you another question, and that is that what about Modi government's denial mode of the situation of hunger, poverty, statistics not coming out properly? So isn't the government really in a denial mode? And the very fact that this extension has been given to the free ration scheme do you not see this as an admission of the prevailing hunger and poverty as well?
I don't think there's an admission. The Modi government is looking at the welfare, and during this gap, while these people, the backward class, the poor, the deprived, they are socially and economically brought up. During that period, some social welfare schemes are to be put in place so that the nutritional deaths do not take place in the country, or people are provided with enough nutrition so that health for all again becomes a reality.
Right. Okay, now let me get in a response from Professor Mehrotra. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Five or six points.
Yes.
I was taking very detailed notes and listening to everyone. So firstly, on the Ayushman Bharat, the health insurance, which was announced that it will cover 50 crore people or 500 million people. We know that during COVID, the Ayushman Bharat failed rather miserably, and I think there is plenty of evidence about it. Secondly, Ayushman Bharat as an insurance scheme is only covering hospitalization. Most of the out-of-pocket expenditure in India is not accounted for by hospitalization. It is accounted for by three other items. What are they? Private consultation fees. Second, diagnostic lab fees which are paid out of pocket. And finally, medicines. Those three account for out-of-pocket costs to a much greater extent than hospitalization. Most people who fall ill, and all of us fall ill, do not enter hospital. But all of us, if we don't have a functional public health system, incur costs on all three things. So I'm sorry to say, when the Ayushman Bharat was announced, I said it in a budget show in 2018 it was,
18.
that this is a government effort to keep its expenditure low. And that's exactly what the government has succeeded in doing on health. What did I say earlier? I'm going to repeat that public expenditure, according to the National Health Policy. Let me finish. I'm going to make 5 or 6 points, and the public expenditure was 1.1% of GDP on health. It has risen last year to 1.3% of GDP, and it was supposed to rise by next year to 2.5. In other words, it is supposed to double as a proportion of GDP. Well, the government is saving funds. Why is the government saving funds? Which brings me to my next point. We were just told that revenues have been soaring. Revenues are increasing only as much as in accordance with the rise in GDP. If revenues were soaring, then how come the following two statistics are also correct? One, the debt to GDP of the government, debt to GDP ratio, which was 5 years ago at 60%, had jumped to over 90% and is just recently climbed down to 83%. So in other words, the government is funding everything not through revenue soaring, supposedly, but through borrowing. Total debt when this government came to power was rupees 55 lakh crores. That has gone well beyond 155 lakh, well beyond. That's the second point. Third point. No political party is opposing the Prime Minister's announcement. I bet you my bottom dollar that they are also thinking, how can we oppose it? We will appear so stingy when the government in power is already offering it. I bet you my bottom rupee that if the India Alliance was to come to power, they will not necessarily implement the announcement by the Prime Minister, because they know the fiscal cost. They know how high the debt to GDP ratio they will have inherited from this government.
Professor Mehrotra, can I just interrupt you for 2 seconds? What you said probably looks like an economic misstep, But it could be a political masterstroke if the other political parties are not.
I don't think, I'm sorry, I don't think that it is likely to be a political masterstroke. Everyone, every ordinary, the poor voter in
Coming to you,
no,
Mr. Bhargav, I'll come to you.
every poor voter knows perfectly well that inflation rate has been running at very high levels, especially food inflation. Secondly, that jobs that they have lost those jobs. So please, I work on jobs, employment issues I've been doing that for the last 25 years, and I've analyzed every government source of data, and it shows that jobs are not growing in the non-farm sector. If anything, 6 crore people went back, reverse migration over COVID, and they have not returned. Some small numbers have returned, but the burden on agriculture has increased so much that real wages in rural areas have dropped. As a result, real wages across the economy have stagnated. At real wages, please notice, accounting for inflation. So inflation is killing them at a time where employment is not growing. And I want to repeat a point that Mr. Rajalakshmi made. Right to food. Please remember, as taxpayers, ordinary people are paying indirect tax. You and I, most of us, pay direct taxes. This is not the government's money. Let the government not be living under any illusion that this is their money and they are giving it to us. If our people have lost jobs, if their incomes are not growing, if real wages are falling or stagnant, it is our taxpayer money that is coming back. And finally, let no one tell me, I have the data in front of me about what the situation of malnutrition currently in the country is. I have the data in front of me, and I'm going to tell you 2015 to 2021, how little has been the improvement. Stunting rate was 38% in 2015, soon after this government came to power. It has only dropped to 35.5. In other words, it has dropped by barely 2 percentage points. That means 1/3 of our children are stunted. Wasting rate, meaning too thin. Stunting is you are too short. Wasting, I mean, it was 21% in 2015. It has barely dropped to 19.3, and the same applies to underweight. So please don't tell me that there is no hunger in this country. In fact, if anything, if Poshan, so-called Poshan program, which this government has initiated, was doing such wonders, then why has the allocation to ICDS been shrunk?
Right.
Allocation to ICDS has shrunk.
Yeah, so Mr. Bhargav, doesn't what Professor Mehrotra has just said, doesn't this look like a very scary picture? If the is the government not really worried on this count?
I think I'll explain each and every point that Professor Malhotra has raised. The first issue that he raised was about the Ayushman Bharat. During the COVID period, it failed. Now, all these welfare schemes are for a normal period. They are not for the pandemic. I think that he has failed to take into account that Ayushman Bharat is a long-term welfare scheme, and that pandemic was one aberration. Now, during the aberration, if you want to assess a scheme, I think that's not a justice. The second thing was some information on the spendings on healthcare. It was 1.9%, and then increased and then decreased.
A free ration scheme, is it a short-term measure or is it a long-term goal of the BJP government?
It's a midterm measure. It's a midterm measure. It's a midterm measure.
Till how long?
Until we are able to skill people and make them self-sufficient to earn enough, and so that they have a good livelihood, they have good facilities.
Which means you yourself are admitting that your skilling program apparently is not working. Is it?
No, it's not that. No. I think you are reading too much out of it. I think you are reading too much out of it. Now, coming to the GDP growth, I think from 1.8 or 1.75, we are almost like plus 3 billion. So the GDP
Trillion.
total is growing, and if you look at the outlays into certain departments, governmental departments, may look to be static or with a small growth, but then the total outlays into the welfare schemes are going up. Now, that has to be taken into account. The allocation to a health department may be for different reasons. There are hospitals to be built, there are medical colleges to be built, and there are administrative expenses. But then that has to be arrested some point of time. I think we are trying to read too much into statistics, because statistics is a funny thing. You can draw any conclusion out of a given statistics.
No,
so
but
I'm looking at
every scheme you roll out, every yojana you roll out is based on the statistics. I mean,
no, it's okay. I'm explaining the statistics. It's not that I'm not explaining you the statistics. Now, tell me, show me one economics. No economist will say that you need not spend on roads, you need not spend on hospitals, you need not spend on railways, you need not spend on the airways. Now, the infrastructure has to be built. We were lacking at it. Now, if the resources that were inherited from the previous governments were not enough, what is the option? How do you grow in your own enterprise? What do you do? What do you do in your own enterprise? Professor Malhotra, he should take pain in explaining that.
All right. I'll get in a quick response. We are running short of time. Professor Malhotra, I'll come to you first, and then the final question to Rajlakshmi, the political question. But I really want a response from you on what Mr. Bhargav has just said. Yes, go ahead, sir.
Nilu, I think it's very simple. It's inevitable that if revenue to GDP ratio was 17% when this government came to power 10 years ago, and it is still 17% of GDP, it is obvious that as GDP has grown, the revenues would have grown. But I'm saying the tax to GDP ratio has not grown. That ratio should have grown because people's incomes, the people who are rich, their incomes have grown. But the government is not willing to tax the rich. If anything, corporate tax rate has been brought down. It has been brought down.
And individual rates have also come down. Individual rates have also come down substantially.
Well, thank you very much. In other words, that's the reason why you are proving what I am saying, that the tax revenue overall to GDP overall, that ratio is still at what it was 10 years ago. And because you want to spend on all these various schemes, beneficiary schemes, you have to borrow and borrow and borrow. That's why your borrowing has gone from
Professor, it is not you want to. Is it a need of the country?
Mr. Bhargav, Mr. Bhargav.
Look at, is it a need of the country? It's not the want of spending it.
Mr. Bhargav, I presume that BJP is against the Revdi culture. And it's the same Revdi.
Long-term or a short, medium-term social welfare schemes are not Revdis. Revdis are like.
So is this a prasad? If it's not a Revdi, is it a prasad by the Modi government to the poor?
You have to distinguish between.
No, but is this a prasad of the Modi government? Is this a prasad by the Modi government to 80 crore households?
See, I don't think we have to look at it that way. One issue that Professor Malhotra said, that the taxpayer money is being spent on this. Yes, the taxpayer money is not going to the pockets of the politician as it used to be. It is going for the welfare of the poor, backward, and deprived. I think, and I agree with Professor Rajlakshmi, that there is no opposition to it. There is no opposition to it.
All right.
That's the only thing that we agree upon.
No, let me come to the final question to Rajlakshmi. Yes, Rajlakshmi, so...
You'll have to let me go. I'm sorry, Neelu, I'll be
Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much.
Professor.
Yes. So
Namaskar,
the final
Pranav.
question, Rajlakshmi, before we
Yeah.
wind up the show, that is this really going to work in favor of the BJP? And obviously, like as what we've discussed, that the political parties, the other opposition parties do have reservations. Whether at all, if India Alliance comes to power in 2024, they're not sure whether they would implement the same thing. So is this a master stroke, or you would say it is a badly implemented announcement, maybe out of a jiffy, out of desperation? What would you say?
See, I think I think the people of this country are also intelligent, and they're also sensitive people. So they would I think I think make a distinction between the short term benefit that is coming to them, and in fact their expectation is going to be for certain long term sustaining forms of employment, where they do not have to be at the receiving end, of charity, of any government for that matter, right? So this kind of a thing is not really a very nice image, or let's say, nobody would like to be in that position to be and, I mean, every self-respecting individual would like to work, earn, and be able to feed his or her family without this kind of a dole, or charity. But unfortunately, 75 years of India's independence, this still has to be done. Is reflective of the crisis, and every political party in fact does sort of resort to this. So I do not think that the BJP will especially gain out of this, because everybody else is also doing it. And besides, if I were a voter, I would say ये इनका फर्ज है, मतलब इनको करना ही है, ये पे एहसान नहीं कर रहे, and this is a duty, so do not expect anything from us.
Yes, you mentioned the point about doles and charity. And with that question, I'll end the program and by asking Mr. Bhargav. Then, Mr. Bhargav, these doles and charity, these measures look like an act of desperation also by the Modi government. Would you admit to that?
I don't agree with this totally.
No, because
for the simple reason, long-term and mid-term schemes of social welfare are not charities. Forget about it, because the taxpayer money is being utilized in a proper manner for the deprived in the country. So we cannot leave the deprived back. We cannot allow them to look towards the government, and still the taxpayer money is protected. It is used in a proper manner for the welfare of the people, and it's not going to the pocket of the politician as it used to be.
Yeah, what I am saying is that it is not a favor that a government does to its people. It is meant
Agreed,
to.
agreed.
It is meant to oblige people by the very fact that it is in government, right? And then to make it into an electoral issue, it's not very nice also to the electorate, because you're making it like Bikharis.
It is not with the
हमने आपको ये दिया, हमने आपको वो दिया, it's like that.
Yes, Mr. Bhargav,
चैरिटी की भावना से किया गया कोई भी काम आपको सक्सेस नहीं देगा. It is the need of the country. It is not a charity. I'm saying again and again, it is not a charity. It is the social welfare scheme for the poor and deprived.
I'm sure this subject is going to be debated largely in the days to come. But as I had mentioned it initially also in between the program, that this will incur an additional cost of 15,000 crore annually. That's coming roughly to about 1 lakh crore annually.
Which is nothing. Which is nothing.
It's nothing according to your
Yes.
statement. All right. So
Yes.
we will see how it pans out. But as of now, all eyes would be on what happens in the 5 states, what kind of results come, because of course this topic will remain a matter of discussion, given the fact that it's going to be extended for 5 years. It will have an impact on the Lok Sabha elections as well. I'll have to end the program here. Thank you so much, Mr. Bhargav. Rajlakshmi, it was wonderful having you on the program.
Thank you, Neeruji.
I appeal to the viewers who are watching this discussion, subscribe to our channel, send us your feedback, and stay tuned to The Federal. Thank you.
Subscribe to The Federal's YouTube page for more news and updates.